When secrets come out in a marriage, it can be devastating. Welcome to today's episode, and we are talking about secrets in a marriage. Whew. Now, for anybody who's been married or is married or considering marriage or in a relationship, the reality is secrets happen in marriages. Secrets happen in relationships. Now, the magnitudes of the secrets can vary, right? So, what's a big deal for one person may not be a big deal for somebody else, but the reality is secrets happen and secrets can cover a vast areas. For example, secrets can come out with fidelity, so considering infidelity with other people involved, whether it's friendships or inappropriate relationships. Secrets could be secret bank accounts that nobody knows about. Secrets can come in the form of shopping and spending money on things that your spouse doesn't know about. What else? Gambling, addictions. The sky is the limit, right? Of what could happen. Past experiences, past situations, secrets, things that you just have kept to yourself. It's a secret because your spouse doesn't know. But I'm a firm believer and living witness to the saying that what is done in the dark will come to the light. Whether you realize it, whether you want it to at times, most marriages, everyone that I know of, so I'll say most because maybe there's a couple out there who has no secrets between you and your spouse, but hey, that's here nor there, that's not the topic. But the reality is secrets do come out, and when they do come out, it definitely can be devastating on both parties, the person that is giving the information and the person that is receiving that information. So I want to talk about how do you navigate that challenge? How do you navigate that if and when that season comes up in your marriage where you have to deal with a secret being revealed? How do you go forward? Do you decide to go forward? Like, what do you do with the feelings, the trust being broken? There's so much stuff that goes with it. So I'm going to give tips for both individuals involved. For example, for the person who has to give the secret and to the person who has to receive the secret. How do you navigate this? And then we're going to talk about, okay, how do we work together? What's the next step moving forward for both parties? So if you are the receiver of the information, hopefully you didn't have to find it, and the person told you willingly what was going on, whenever it might have been. But even if you had to find it, if you are the receiver of the information, the first thing that I want to make sure that you take this as a tip is allow yourself time to process what was shared with you. Literally, allow yourself time to process it. Like, you might think upon it now. You got to be mindful though when you try to process, because you don't want to go into a spiral, right? Because that can happen. And then it's like thought after thought after thought after thought. And then like you can lose it, right? We don't want you to lose your mind, even though it may feel like you're about to. You can't control that, right? But give yourself time to process. If that means asking questions, if that means listening for different things, that really depends on you as an individual, because the one way one person receives a secret is not going to be the same way as another person. So do not think that what you do is ultimately right or wrong, or that you have to do it or handle the situation the same way somebody else would, okay? But allow yourself time to process. Second, don't feel forced to talk about the situation when you hear the news. Why? Because this goes into your processing. You may not be ready. You may not have the words right when you hear the secret or when things come out to you, depending on what it is. If it is just that devastating to you, your world is shook. That feeling, that pit in your stomach that you get, you may not be ready. And you don't have to talk about it right then when the other person wants to share the information. But give them the benefit of the doubt and say, hey, you know what? I need a minute. But whatever you do, make sure you talk about it. Don't allow yourself to take that minute, however long that takes, and then you just never address it because you just want to stay with it, or you come up with your own ideas, you come up with your own reasoning, you come up with your own rationale of why they did what they did or why they didn't tell you, especially if it's something like from their past or whatever the case may have been. So make sure you do talk about it. And I give the advice or the suggestion that when you are ready to talk about it, be honest. It's not the time to hold back your feelings because you're worried about how you're going to make them feel. Yes, be mindful. I do believe in how you say what you say. There is a way that we should talk to one another, even when we're hurt, even when we're sad or discouraged. There still is a way that we talk to each other because our words and what we say, it matters, right? We hear about that in the Bible. But if you realize that your emotions are too high or you don't think the conversation is going to go effectively, I do recommend having a third party, unbiased person to be there to help mediate the conversation. That could be a counselor. I don't recommend a family member at all, but in some cases, some people have family members who maybe are counselors who are able to separate themselves and not pick sides, right? But whoever it is, it needs to be an unbiased person, spiritual counsel, maybe a pastor, whatever you feel comfortable. But both parties need to feel comfortable talking to that person to help them navigate that conversation because you do need to talk about it. And third, if you're the receiver of this information, do not make a permanent decision when your emotions are high. When you're mad, and I mean just like peed off, I'll just say it that way. You pissed off, right? And you in shock, you're distraught, like everything. That's not the time to make a permanent decision. Okay, that's not the time to say I'm walking away. That's not the time to say, you know what, I'm closing up all these bank accounts, whatever the secret is, right? It's not the time to say you got to cut off this person. Allow yourself time to process, allow yourself time to talk about the situation, and allow yourself, most importantly, to go to God about your decision. Please don't make a move until he tells you. Our emotions are there as an indicator to tell us how we're feeling and what we're going through, but do not allow your emotions to lead your decision. Okay? Because in the heat of the moment, you can say, I'm done. I don't want to work on it. I don't want to talk about it. And you may not have consulted God about it at all. So you're doing something just out of probably, to protect yourself, like a defense mechanism at this point, especially if it's a complete shock. But do not make a permanent decision when your emotions are still high. Make your decision, right? When you feel like you've rationalized, when you've been able to calm down from it, you've been able to talk and process, and after you've spoken to God, because he's going to tell you exactly what to do. And that advice may be different than what any other person tells you. So make sure you have some time to go to God about this as well. Okay? That's just a couple of tips. Now, if you are the person who has to share the information, let me just reaffirm you that first, rest assured that your decision to be open and honest with your spouse is right. I know you may go back and forth in your mind, like, do I really need to tell them? They may not ever find out, or it doesn't really matter. It's done, it's over, or you make a resolve within yourself, like, you know what, I'm just going to stop doing this. I'm not going to do it no more. It's no point in telling them. When you get to that point, there's something in you, or I'm going to say the Holy Spirit begins to prick you and say, yo, I need you to go back and handle this. I need you to go back and fix this. And this could be years down the line, right? It's the right thing. First of all, it's the right thing, especially if the Holy Spirit prompted you. You always want to listen to the Holy Spirit. It's a win-win situation when you listen to the Holy Spirit. Okay, I know that may not feel like that while you're in the moment, but when you're listening to his direction, you can't go wrong. Okay. And second, you want to have a type of marriage and a relationship where there are no secrets. That should be your goal. I know that's easier said than done in some relationships because some people, you try to open up to your spouse, right? And they just don't respond well, or these emotional responses, and it just is like, all over the place. But you want to develop a relationship where you can be honest. I mean honest about everything, right? That's the goal. That's the desire. So opening up about your secret is a good thing. Now, if you're doing it out of spite, right? Like I want to hurt them, like it's a spit in the face. You need to. Why would you want to do that? I guess that's the question. Why would you even want to do that? Why are you trying to hurt your spouse by revealing a secret? You should be wanting to reveal a secret, if anything. And you may not want to reveal a secret, but you should reveal a secret just so you can clean the air because you're one, right? And it's a part of growing within the marriage. Second, if you're the person sharing the information, you have to understand, realize, accept the fact that you cannot control how your spouse is going to respond. There is no telling what he or she is going to do or say. And you can't control that. They may make an emotional decision and leave. They may close bank accounts. They may separate stuff. They may call somebody and do this. They might make a post. I mean, I hope not, but they might. You can't control that. They have got to be able to process it however they choose to process it. And you may not agree, because the reality is, what you would do in response of hearing your secret, like say, for example, if your spouse told you the secret that you just told them, you can't expect them to respond the way you would have responded, because the reality is it may not be the same. And you can't get mad at them for responding the way they choose to respond. Okay, you can't control that. You can only control what you're doing in that moment, which is you being honest and you being open and you being vulnerable with your spouse. And the rest, you better pray about it and hope that your spouse can respond in a favorable way. But they got free will, homie. They can do what they want to do. Even God's gonna give them free will to make whatever choice they want to make at the end of the day. So you kind of got to accept it. Now, that doesn't mean like abuse, like should nobody be hitting on you or should nobody be going crazy or taking your kids or, that's something like that. That's just a little too far. That does matter. So hopefully that's not a ramification or, of a secret coming out, because then you are going to have to put some measures in place to make sure you're safe or your kids are safe or whatever happens with that. Third, if you're the person that is sharing the information, take the time to self-reflect on why you did what you did and make the necessary changes if you have not already, and don't repeat it. Okay? Now, some of you, by the time you told your spouse a secret, you may have already made a resolve, like, I'm not going to do that no more. My bad. You asked God for forgiveness, the whole 9 yards. Okay, that's cool. That's good. But do make sure you have at some point really taken some time to ask yourself, okay, why did I do this? Why did I allow myself to make these moves without my spouse knowing? Because that may be an area within your marriage that you need to work on. Okay, you deciding to stop doing something, but yet the root of why you did it isn't addressed. You need to make sure you address it. And that's why the honesty is important. If you kept a secret from like a life that you had back when, say before you even knew your spouse, and there were things that you did that you just never want to tell them because you was embarrassed, think about that. Talk about that. Figure that out within yourself, or why not share that with the person that you saying you're going to become one with. Okay, so self-reflection is very important for that person that is also the one who has to reveal the secret. Now, for both parties involved, a couple of tips. One, be mindful of who you share this information with. This is not time to be posting subliminal messages on social media. This is not time to be calling everybody mama and them and everybody else to tell them. Be mindful. Your friend, your homie, whoever it is, your confidant. Be mindful of who you tell, because everybody may not give you sounding advice, right? Everybody may not agree with your outcome of what you decide. If you decide to stay together, whatever the case it is, they may not agree, or they may not ever forget. The way you're able to forgive your spouse and what you guys decide to work on doesn't mean that the other people outside of your relationship will give you that same support. So be careful who you tell. No, that really matters. You be like, oh, I had to talk to somebody. Well, then you better get you a counselor. Somebody who is bound confidentiality wise to not share this information with nobody, and they're not going to make no opinion because they could care less. You know what I mean? Like I can't think of the analogy I'm thinking of, but they could care less. They just want to help you navigate it. They're not picking no sides. There's no favoritism. So be careful who you tell. This is not everybody's secret. Go to God first, write it in your journal, talk about it, try to process it. If you have a counselor, then it's the time to call them. If you've got, I can go on and on about examples of that, but be careful who you tell it to. It matters. Okay. Number 2, remember, for both parties, all advice is not good advice. I kind of hinted to that already. All advice is not good advice. What so-and-so did when that situation happened in their relationship does not mean that works for you. Okay. All advice is not good advice. So even in this season where you're trying to navigate, this secret coming out, and you're trying to, whatever you're doing, you're mending or even you're separating, whatever the case it is, be mindful of who you get advice from. And as believers, we should be getting some source of biblical advice, right? To some kind of aspect, some type of Christian principles, some type of guidance from the Holy Spirit and from God, because hopefully you've spoken to him as well as the main source of your advice and your direction. So please be in that place where you're able to hear God clearly, because he knows better than anybody else what he's trying to do in the midst of your relationship. I understand this secret coming out may have been devastating, but you don't know how God can move in that situation. So go to him together. Talk about it when the emotions calm down, and follow his advice first before you follow anybody else's advice, because he knows what's going to happen 5 years from now. He knows what he wants to do in the midst of this. He knows what he's cleaning up in the relationship. He knows best out of anybody. Go to him. Third, if reconciliation is possible and both parties want it, then you better fight for your marriage. Man, I don't care how bad the secret is. I don't care if somebody else divorced because of the secret. It don't matter. If you've made up in your mind and God said, you know, I give you the grace to go through this. I want y'all to work on this together, because God could tell you that too. Like, I want y'all to work on this. I don't want you to leave. I want y'all to work on this. Then fight for your marriage. Do the work. That means you're going to have to go to a counselor. You're going to have to go to a person to help you, teach you the strategies to rebuild the trust, because it's a form of trauma with certain secrets come out, depending how devastating they are. So you're going to have to do the work to figure out, okay, how do I reprogram my brain to align in certain ways that it's supposed to align? And that's what you get from counselors. They teach you that. How do you make sure defense mechanisms don't build up in your relationship? How do you make sure that the walls don't stay up? How can you learn to trust each other again? How can you come closer together? Because it's possible. It is possible. So if you decide, you know what, you and your husband, you and your wife, whatever the case is, whoever's watching this, if you decide we're going to work on this and we're going to push through, fight for your marriage. Don't allow the opinion of anybody to tell you to walk away from your marriage. If y'all two understand what you're going to do it, write it out, and do the work, because every secret being revealed does not mean you have to separate or divorce. Okay, now I gave you a variety of different tips and strategies. And this is not an exhaustive list, but this is somewhere for you to start. Okay, the goal of a marriage is to be based on biblical principles, and that is becoming one. So when you are becoming one, secrets should begin to minimize. Now, I understand you're not going to tell your person everything, but there are certain things, like, what are we hiding stuff for? If you got to hide it, then why are you doing it? But the goal is to become one. Okay, so keep this in mind if you are currently in this season and overcoming a secret coming out, or if you're debating whether or not to tell your secret, but something is pricking in your spirit to speak up. Gotta direct you, gotta tell you. It's never a perfect time, so you make the time to do it with the goal and intention of being one. All right. Now, for more tips and strategies on your marriage, please check out seasons 1 and 2 on my podcast, Pursue Her. But until then, stay strong, stay encouraged, fight for your marriage. Take care.